Hello and welcome to the Epic Kate podcast. I don't know why I said it so dramatically, but bear with. If you know me, if you know this podcast, you know that I love conversations about people's interesting spiritual journeys and perspectives and paths and what led them there and what their gifts are and how they're making the world a better place. And this was a really interesting conversation. I would love to go deeper with her another time. It's very interesting for me personally because as someone who grew up in the world of thinking that everything that was spiritual, that was woo-woo is evil, there's a whole other subset of people that have been around so many different blocks, have been in so many groups. And so Patricia, the wonderful lady that I had the conversation with this time, she was around in a turning of time when people were really searching, like in the Seattle Pacific Northwest area, and in the 80s and 90s when things were really starting to shift and things were starting to become more normal and acceptable. And yeah, it's just really interesting to take a trip down into her world. I won't even try to label her or put her into any boxes. We will talk about that in this conversation, but I hope you'll enjoy it. She's a fascinating person. And I mean, the reason that I reached out to her in the first place was when I connected with her on Facebook and saw that she has a gift for being able to communicate psychically with animals. And she even managed to kind of make a little connection with one of my cats. How fun is that? Magic, wonder. That's what we're here for. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation.
Heartfelt conversations can change the world. Here's the Epic Kate podcast.
I'm so glad to be able to have the chance to talk to you about your spiritual journey.
I almost want to reach out.
Oh, my cat is so attracted to you.
I actually really like tabbies a lot too.
Yeah, he's like a mixture of something or other.
He's got a tiger in him.
Yeah, him and his brother are tigers, all right. So I'm so happy to jump into your spiritual journey. Like, when did you discover your gifts? What are your gifts? Give us a chance, give us an introduction, if you will.
Okay. Well, I think I've always had gifts. Like I was a weird child, and you probably hear that a lot, right? I was like the weird child. And my brother used to make fun of me because I would make friends with the kids that nobody liked, right? And my brother is so ambitious, and he's so like into like status and like looking good and looking cool and all the rest of that. And I just remember having a lot of compassion as a child for like other kids, for animals, especially for animals. And I was kind of a loner. So my mom would get these report cards saying that I didn't socialize and that I was, I don't know, like all these like negative, like, because they didn't understand children back when I was growing up. And so if you didn't act like all the other children, then you were a problem child, right? And so I know there were a lot of other children, when you think back, that they must have had like different gifts too, but they weren't encouraged because I lived in a military religious community. So, you could talk about UFOs and things like that, but if you talked about like, oh, I think I'm seeing angels or something like that, it just never would, would never fly, and you'd probably get made fun of and taunted. And, so that was kind of my childhood. And then I sort of morphed into a typical teen, where I was into the clothes and the boys and rock music and, all the stuff where I was just pushing everything else aside. And then I went to a liberal arts college, and I met a woman, and I think it was my senior year, and she was talking about reincarnation. And oh, kitty. And like downward cat pose.
Yes. Yeah, free life yoga cat session.
Yeah, okay. Like, so what's the cat pose? So I'd be like pretty bad on camera though. But anyways, Yeah, so she was into reincarnation, and she had those books by Shirley MacLaine, because those books had just come out at the time. And I just thought that was weird, and it scared me. Like, how could that even possibly be? Right? Because I was brought up religious, and I had rebelled against religion, but it still had a hold on me. So I gave it a chance, like, because people go, oh, you should be more open-minded. And it was a liberal arts college, so it was like as left as you can possibly go without being communist. I mean, it was really far left. And so then after that, I met another woman who was studying shamanism. There was a shamanism class at the university. This is how strange the place was. And I thought that was really strange. Like, I just, she was telling me about all these worlds she traveled to and the astral cord. And she was using all these words I had never heard of before. But there was a part of me that was fascinated by it. Like, oh, well, what if that were true? But I was still resisting it. Like, I don't want to be one of those freaks, because there was a college called Fairhaven College, and that's where they had all those alternative classes. And so there were people that were Fairhaven majors, and people used to make fun of them, right? Like, oh yeah, they do all this weird stuff over there. And so I didn't really want to be associated with it, but at the same time, I was like, wow, this is really cool. So then on my birthday, that happened after that, I became a vegetarian, like just out of the blue, like no thought about it ahead of time or anything. On that day, I just said, okay, I'm going to become a vegetarian. And then she gave me a book called Creative Visualization. And so she gave me a book called Creative Visualization. And I read the book and I started doing the meditations, and I had never meditated in my life. And all of a sudden, I was able to create things like through visualizing it and affirming it. And they were like happening like really fast, but then they were things that I actually didn't want to have happen. So I wished for things that I wish I hadn't wished for. And then I said, oh, there's something going on here, right? So then I put all that aside and I go to an exchange program in Canada, like a theater exchange program. And I'm not thinking of any of this stuff. But then when I came back, I moved to Seattle. And Seattle was the epicenter, one of the epicenters in the United States at the time of New Age anything, right? And so it's not so much like that now. But when I went there were like spiritual conferences, there were card readers, there were astrologers. And so I went to an astrologer and she saw some gifts, and then I started going to these healers because I was sick. And they started saying, you've got shamanic gifts, you've got this, you've got that. And I just said, no, well, I don't think I could ever really pursue that, because I was kind of, I wouldn't say lazy, but I didn't want to put in all the effort that you had to do to get good at it. I just wanted to be good at it. And so the card reading that was one of the first things I did. And then I started learning astrology. And so I was in my 20s at the time. And then it was just kind of encountering all these different people. But there was one thing that happened to me, and I haven't told very many people. I was about 18 years old and I came home from college, and I woke up one morning and my whole bedroom was full of like golden threads. And it was like this really bright light, and there was these threads, and it looked like a big spider web. So I was half awake, and I just screamed and I popped my neck out. So then I had to go to this blind chiropractor. So anyways, I put that aside. And then I was taking an acting class a few years later, and I couldn't find a script like all the scripts just didn't work. And then finally I did the Joan of Arc script. It was like a French one, but it was, translated into English. And I started getting like these really weird feelings in my body. Like, not that I mean, at the time I thought maybe I had been her in a past life, but I wasn't. It was just that I was picking up on her energy really strong, because at the time I didn't know that I was a spiritual channel. And so beings started entering my body without my permission at times, because I didn't know about boundaries. And if I had gone to a therapist and said any of this, it probably would have thought I had like some kind of dissociative disorder or something. Well, maybe you have multiple personalities, but luckily I didn't go to a therapist, and so I never had that diagnosis. But there was a time where, this is around when I was 18 or 19, where I walked into this big department store, and this is back when they had the synthesizers. And there was one that was just out and people were just going and playing it. And I went into a trance. I walked up to it. I don't know how to play piano. Like I've never had lessons. I don't know how to play. Apparently I play the piano. I come out of the trance. There's all these people standing around clapping. And my mom goes, I didn't know you knew how to play piano. I'm like, what? And so I'm putting all this stuff aside. Like I'm just pushing it away in the back. Because they were just like all these things that were happening when I was really young, going from being a teen to becoming an adult. And so flash forward to maybe a few years ago, I had a Lyron collective, when people were talking about star seeds. I go, wow, this is really fascinating. And I was looking at all the descriptions. And then eventually I was meditating and I started getting these messages from the Lyrons. And they say, well, your soul is a star seed and you are from Vega Lyra, right? And I was like, oh no, please, just not something else, just not another label, not more responsibility, not more of, but then I started remembering playing the piano and going to the trance and then the gold threads. And I'm like, okay, so the Lyrons are associated with the color gold. Like they're associated with Leo, they're associated with all this lion cat energy. And then bird energy for the Vega. And I go, okay, so maybe that's why when I walk around, I've got crows following me like a parade, and all these like really unusual things, right? And I'm trying to just be normal. I'm trying to just be like, I'm into spiritual things, but I don't want to stand out because I'm an introvert, right? I don't want to stand out. I don't want to become famous. I don't, I'm just like, okay, I'm just doing my own thing here. And then they start giving me responsibilities, like, okay, you're going to do channeling, you're going to do animal communication, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. I just do a bunch of different things and I don't like the labels. Like I'm just finding that the labels are really annoying because they limit what you can do. And I think we're multidimensional. I think we're capable of so much more than we've ever been told. But if we start putting labels on us, then you just end up doing like a podcast or something, and the poor podcasters just going through like a whole bunch of labels just to do the bio, right? So, but I think everybody has these gifts, and I think it's just a matter of how far you're awakened and whether you want to, whether people want to open the door to those gifts or whether they don't want to do it in this lifetime. I think there's a choice.
Do you think that the different signs throughout your life were kind of planted there for you to collect them for when you were ready to gather all of them together to realize they were pointing to something?
Yeah, I think that's the way it is for everybody. I think there's breadcrumbs. But you don't remember all the stuff from the past until you kind of put it together like a puzzle. Because we put it in the closet, right? We're just kind of like, okay, I don't want to deal with that right now. Or and the other thing that I've noticed with a lot of spiritual gifted people is that they've all had like really bad childhoods. There's trauma, whether it's the loss of a parent, whether it's a narcissistic parent, an alcoholic parent, maybe a sibling, maybe they have a sibling that causes problems for them. It might not necessarily be the parent, it could be a grandparent, it could be a neighbor. But if you look at all of the really great spiritual people, especially of our time, they'll all, when they start telling their story, they all start mentioning some kind of childhood thing, or they had a near-death experience. Like Greg Braden, I guess, had 3 of them or something. And so it seems like you almost have to go through all of that to sort of break you up, to shatter the ego, I think it is, so that the spirit can come through. And I used to be mad that I went through everything that I went through and feel so much shame about it. I'm still healing that. But then I meet other people and they're sharing their stories and they had similar experiences. I'm like, wow, because we think we're the only ones going through something. And then you look around and you're like, wow, look at all these people that have gone through a similar situation.
And just like the feeling of people are going to think I'm crazy. I'm so isolated with this bizarreness. And
right. Or or you've got dead people talking to you, it's like, what?
Like that golden thread thing, like that's so bizarre. It almost sounds a bit like the glitch in the Matrix. Like you saw the mainframe of the computer, or I don't know, I don't speak computer, but um it's almost like that. What do you think that that actually was?
I think it was eventually, I'm not Native American, but I really got in heavily into Native American spirituality, you know, a lot of their symbolism and their stories. For a long time, I was really into the Native American stories. And there's one called the Spider Woman. Like, well, I mean, she was an actual, they actually think, I mean, their stories are real. So it's, you know, it's not like if we're reading a Greek myth, we're just saying it's just a myth, right? Whereas in Native American culture, these beings are real to them. And so there's the Spider Woman. And I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense. And the Native American spirit guides can come to anybody. You don't have to be Native American to have a Native American spirit guide. And the Spider Woman, she does come to people. And I think that that might have been part of it. And I was also seeing spiders all the time.
Huh.
Like throughout most of my adult life, I'd see these gold spiders kind of coming down toward my bed. But then when I go out of a blurry vision into a clear vision, there's nothing there. Or I would get bitten by spiders, not the poisonous ones, but I have been bitten by spiders several times. And they leave these really hard knobs like underneath your skin, and it's painful. But and then the other one was that the Lyrons were doing some threads. They were, I don't know, maybe they were trying to create a cocoon or something. I'm not sure what they were doing. They were trying to wake me up, basically. And I was scared. Because I used to be really scared of spiders.
Mm.
So seeing a big giant spider web in front of me, or having dreams about golden spiders, or and I don't really know what to correlate it with, because I can't look back at my life and go, every time I saw this is what happened. So I don't really know like what was connected to it, you know. But then I went to this Reiki practitioner once, and she was following all these threads, and she got really frustrated, which Reiki practitioners don't usually get frustrated. And she goes, I can't figure out which thread to follow. She goes, why do you have so many threads? And I didn't get it at the time. I was like, well, I don't know what you're talking about, you know? And she goes, you're so multidimensional. Like, I don't even know how you're able to stay sane. Like,
Wow.
how are you able to move through life with all of these threads on you? Because I don't know what kind of Reiki she was doing, but I've never worked with threads doing a Reiki treatment on anyone, you know? So she may have been trained in something else besides Reiki, but I've never forgotten that, because she was so frustrated. And she was trying to help me. I can't remember if I had a neck problem. I can't remember what it was. And that's the other thing. I've had so many neck problems in my lifetime. You know, like I'm always like a stiff neck, and the shoulders and all the rest of that. And so I go to all these practitioners, you know, cranial sacral, Reiki. I went to this one woman who was doing somatics, and I had never had that before. And then she freaked out. She almost had like a nervous breakdown. I'm like, what is going on? And she said that there was some evil spirit or something. And I don't think there was, because I was feeling pretty good. I wasn't feeling any dark energy. But I think what happened with that practitioner is she was exhausted, because she was overbooking herself, and she didn't have enough help, and she was trying to run a business, and she was doing all the massages and everything herself. And I didn't feel like she was mentally stable. And then she just, yeah, she kind of lost it. And then I didn't want to ever go back and have somatics again. But now I do, you know, now I'm going, yeah, I'll just go to somebody else. Obviously I'm not going to go back to her. But yeah, I mean, so that was weird, where twice I've had like energy healers either get frustrated, or like that woman, she was like almost crying, and I was like, oh my God. And I felt guilty, like, well, what did I do? But I didn't do anything. I just walked in there, you know. And the building wasn't really in a good area anyway, so I think the building may have had a lot of energy in the building itself. So that was probably more or less what was happening.
So I'm curious about your family, in that you said you were raised religious. Was
Mhm.
it like were your parents super like Christian, I'm assuming? Or
My mom was a lapsed Catholic. She was actually booted out of the Catholic Church for getting a divorce. And she became Lutheran. So my dad joined the church much later. So he wasn't the religious one, but my mom was super religious. And
Lutheran
the church was really strict. It was
Lutherans, like I went to a Lutheran school, but I grew up Pentecostal, fundamentalist, evangelical, all that fun stuff.
more strict, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember like speaking in tongues, and my Lutheran friends saying, "That's not a real thing. That's the devil," you know. Um,
Yeah,
so
Lutherans.
how was it coming out of the closet to about all that was going on with your gifts and discovering who you are with them?
Well, I never came out of the closet because, again, I went to the liberal school, and so everybody was weird there. So,
Everybody's
yeah,
believing
so the
everything.
weirder you were, the better you were. And then when I went to Seattle at the time, it's not so much now, but the Seattle at the time was this real hippie place. This is back in the 80s, and it was a lot of music and art and a lot of new age spirituality, a lot of like people just being really open, doing all kinds of things. I mean, open in so many different ways. But then Seattle kind of turned into a nightmare because it was too far left. And so now there's homelessness and drugs and, you know, they never solved a lot of the problems because they were trying to be too open-minded. So Seattle isn't what it used to be. But when I was in Seattle, the time I was there, you could teach New Age workshops. You could, go to a shaman. You could go get soul retrievals, acupuncture, herbalist. I mean, everything was there. Like everything you can possibly imagine within metaphysics. And there was the Rosicrucian Society. There was all these weird bookstores, there were Buddhist communities. There were um, everything. And then there was a New Age bookstore that was down the street from me in the last place that I lived. And I used to go to workshops there all the time. Like every week I would go see somebody. And so I learned discernment pretty early on because not everything is, not everything's legit. But there was a Siberian shaman who came to one workshop, and that was really interesting. And then there were, all kinds of people. I mean, and then we volunteered at the spiritual conferences, so we met a lot of the famous people, like Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson, Lynn Andrews, Lynn Andrews is no longer alive, unfortunately. She was a medicine woman. And so there were all these really, there was like the Celestine Prophecy came out around that time, and everybody had their little groups. There were like book groups that were studying the insights and the prophecies. And then anytime a big bestseller book came out, there'd be groups of people that would meet at houses, and they would, so there were spiritual drum circles. That's when sound baths and sound healing was starting up. So there was all these people exploring self-development, and it kind of came out of the hippie movement, and then it just sort of went into the 80s, and then it went into the 90s, and it just kept morphing into something else. But then you started seeing people starting to sell out, and that was disappointing. When they start getting really big. And
It's such a hard thing though, isn't it? Like life does cost money. We do need to, people do deserve to be
right.
paid for their work.
Oh yeah.
But it's like, finding the balance in that to it's like so many of us are heart-led people that want to make the world a better place, and
But we're
to
starving.
find our people. So who are your people? How has your spiritual journey led to you to the path that you're on now in helping others?
Well, I think early on, Lynn Andrews, the medicine woman that I mentioned, she was just huge. I read all her books, and I go, oh, I really want to do what she's doing, which was to be a shaman. And everybody, I was meeting all these women who wanted to be shamans, in the spiritual communities. Obviously, if I went to a regular accounting thing or something, there probably wouldn't be a lot of people wanting to be shamans. However, yeah, a lot of people were really fascinated with the Mayans and the Aztecs, and a lot of people were going to Central America, and they were studying with, different shamanic traditions. There were a lot of women shamans teaching workshops and doing journeying and drumming. And so Lynn Andrews was huge. I just loved her books. And they were actually not fiction. There was also Carlos, what was his name? Or Carlos. Oh, I can't think of his name. No, it wasn't our Carlos. It was Castaneda. Carlos Castaneda was really big. And he was kind of a medicine man, right? Well, it turned out his books were all fiction, but we thought they were real. Like he sold his books as being real shamanic experiences. And then finally he came out, it wasn't that long ago, maybe it was about 20 years ago or something, where he said, oh, that was all fiction. And people were seriously following his shamanic. They were really surreal books. They just took you out of your mind into these other realms. And then Lynn Andrews was also at the same time putting out her books, and her books were all real. And so that was the difference. He was probably more famous than her. He was, I think he was an anthropologist or something, and he was studying some native traditions, and then he wrote these books. But we thought he was real. And everybody was like reading his books and passing his books on to their friends. And you're like, wow, I would love to have these kinds of experiences. And then her books were real. And then she taught some workshops and things. And she studied with these Native American elders in Canada. And she was living in Los Angeles at the time. And so she was an influence for sure early on. And then Marianne Williamson was an influence early on. But I don't do the Course of Miracles, so I got kind of lost. Wasn't able to keep up with her. And then there were, just people that I met that weren't famous, shamans, local people teaching workshops. There was a women's spiritual conference where, again, there was a lot of shamanic women. There was Gabrielle Roth, who did the 5 rhythms with dance. And, basically, I think she introduced trance dancing, in a modern sense. And there were all these different, mostly women. I was mostly influenced by women, I would say.
And so what led you to the path that you're on now, as far as what are you doing to help people?
Well, I do mostly helping animals.
Like animals, right. So you talk to animals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm doing that to help humans bond more deeply with animals.
Okay. So how does that work? How do you connect and bond with an animal?
Well, it's telepathic.
Okay.
And it is something we can all do.
Okay.
But what happens when you say you're an animal communicator to most people is they think you're just walking up to an animal and just talking to them. Like, hi, how you doing? Oh, look, let me pet you. They're thinking that's all it is, and they don't want to pay for it because they're like, well, I can do that. I can talk to my animal. It's like, and it's not animal body language. So it's not animal behavior. Like, we're not going and going, oh, the tail's up and it's doing this and it's doing that. We're not doing that, but sometimes we use that just for discernment purposes. We're actually telepathically going into a space and asking the spirit of the animal if we can have a conversation.
Okay. Can you do that remotely?
Yeah, you can. You can do it with a photograph.
Wow.
It's actually better to do it that way because then you're not distracted by the live animal.
Right. And how much you want to cuddle it.
Right. Like, you're so cute. Oh, I guess I can't get over this. Because I'm like a really big dog person. And they have this one face that they'll give you. It's like their begging face or their cookie face, I call it. Yeah, that face. Yeah. And some of them with the really big eyes. I'm such a sucker for that. It's like, oh, no, I can't give you any cookies. You're already over, no, you've already had too many calories today or whatever. You haven't been for a walk. And, and they're like begging and begging and begging and begging.
Aw.
So, hi, kitty.
I put my camera down because I was wondering, how does that work? Oh, come on, cat. Don't leave me now. I wanted to see if you would say anything to Patricia.
Let me see if I can see the eyes at all. Well, usually I put them in a pink bubble and I put myself in a pink bubble of protection.
Oh, okay.
And then I ask them if they want to communicate. I'm just getting I'm not really getting words or anything. I'm just getting energy that makes me want to giggle. It's ticklish. It's kind of ticklish. It's kind of like Yeah, I mean, I just want to laugh. I don't even know what the joke is, but there's some joke that, what's the cat's name?
Kira,
Kira, female,
boy.
boy.
We'd
Okay.
kind of joke that he's trans because we thought he was a
Oh,
she, and then when we went to get him fixed, there was an undescended testicle.
oh, yeah, that's been happening a lot with dogs and cats. Well, not a lot, but it is happening. Yeah, okay, so Kira, I feel like this cat likes to play tricks,
Um,
maybe a little bit, kind of, it feels
maybe I need to pay
it's
more
like
attention to that.
kind of a Loki energy, like a kind of a trickster sense of humor for sure. Like life is really funny. Like everything's really funny to this cat.
I love that.
Really good sense of humor.
Oh, that is so neat.
And like I have like the chest there. I like the face is like all the way over. It's like the hidden
Like
life, the hidden
he's just
life of
kind of looking into my ring light a little bit, like he's posing for it, but the camera's over there, you know?
Yeah, I can't see I can see it's just the side of the cat.
Yeah, I know.
Can't really see the face. Well, you see, that's what I mean. Like it's this sort of trickster energy. Yeah.
Oh. So,
Does does he have like a really good friend, like
yeah,
another animal
his
that's really
brother Carlson.
okay? Okay, so he likes to play tricks on the other one.
Oh yeah.
Like he thinks he's the smart one.
Ha!
Like I'm the smart one. I'm the better of the two.
Kira's our fancy boy. He much prefers to be inside, and Carlson is like the Secret Service when we're walking out to pick up the baby.
Okay.
He's like following along, like, I'm here. Now I'm here.
He likes his brother a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but he
He was
likes to.
born in this house. We fostered his mom, and we took her in 4 days before she gave birth to 7 cats.
Oh wow, seven's kind of a mystical number.
Yeah. It was a chaotic time.
Yeah, I mean, I just get like so much humor out of this cat. I mean, I'm not like again, I'm not getting words. I'm getting the color pink. Not really getting visuals. A lot of the times the animals will send me like little movies, which I'll pick up with my third eye. I'm also not in a trance right now, so I'm not going as deep as I normally could.
Mm.
But I'm just picking up like this cat is like a really happy cat and just loves laughing. Like, I don't know how cats laugh. I don't know if they actually physically laugh or if it's just in the soul of the cat, but life is just really funny to this cat. Like everything
Aw.
is really humorous.
He is really meant to be in our family because we are a humor chasing family. My
Oh,
husband's
there you go.
got terrible puns ready to go all the time.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's maybe influence. I see, like he's sticking his butt toward the camera. It's like
Yeah.
and he knows he's doing that. Like he's very much aware that there's a camera rolling. He's very much aware of what because he sees you doing this all the time.
Yeah.
So he knows what you're doing. And see now he's just trying to get some. Oh, look, he's gonna climb on top
You
of the
better not
chair.
eat my plants. No, you don't eat my
No,
plants.
plants are poisonous. I like the white legs, the white socks on the legs. He kind
Yeah.
of reminds me of some other cats that I've known in the past.
I'm
He's
talking about that Loki.
now he's pointing out the sign to listen, inspire, and grow.
Yeah. And wanting to eat my aloe while he's at it.
Yeah, you don't want him eating plants. That's not good.
No. So how has your animal communicating helped people? Do you have any neat stories of communication that's really changed things?
I have some general stories because I don't really share like any specific ones.
Right.
The ones that are the most touching are when the animal's getting ready to pass on. And you've got like a senior animal that's already giving signs that it's going to die. And the people who would normally go to an animal communicator are like super, super loving, compassionate people. So they're not your regular pet owner that ignores the pet and just has it in the background kind of animal. They're usually people that see their animals like a best friend and they want to help the animal through a transition. So I think I've had like both dogs and cats, and the person's grieving, obviously. And so the animal communicator is really there to bring comfort to the person and the animal, and also allow the animal to speak whatever last words it has or how it wants to die. They don't all want to be euthanized, but some of them actually do, because they're in a lot of pain and they're giving permission and say, yeah, I'm ready to go. They don't see the afterlife. They don't see death the way that we do. They don't see it as an ending. They see it as returning to the creator, because I think all animals are spiritual and they don't have the choice to disconnect from God the way our creator, whatever word you want to use. They don't have the choice that we do. The only species that has a choice of choosing between good or evil or whatever, I don't really like those terms, but to either be connected to the source or not be connected to source, are humans. And everybody else is connected to source. So when their life ends, they know that they're returning to that neutral space, and it's not scary for them. But being sick is scary for them, and also having to feel everybody's emotions, and a lot of them feel responsible for the emotions of their human. So they want to comfort, like they want to go through the process, like they want to just cross over into the other realm. But at the same time, they'll hang on a little bit longer because they're worried and concerned about the human because of the grief, and they don't want to cause any pain. They don't want to cause any anguish or grief. And so they'll hang on a little bit longer, and they want there to be closure for everyone before they pass on. And most animals don't get that because most people don't go to an animal communicator or Reiki or all the different types of healing that's out there for animals, whether that's homeopathy or flower essences or whatever it is. There's so many things available to animals now. Almost everything that's available to humans is available to animals.
So are there animal ghosts? Do you ever
Yeah, there are.
with them before?
Yeah, there are animal spirits. And that's usually because there hasn't been closure, or because the person had a really deep bond with that animal. And so the animal spirit will come around for a while and then disappear, and then maybe even come back years later because they have a message that they want to bring. They can become a spirit guide. Like once they cross over, they can become a spirit guide. So they may be, like, people meditate or they dream, then they'll have that animal will come into their dreams, into the astral with them, and will give them lessons and talk to them. And especially if they're going through a hard time, like a divorce or a death, or something where they're going through a hard time, the animal will come back and give them comfort and try to help them through a situation if they had a really good bond with them. So, I mean, we're not talking animals that were abused or neglected. We're talking about animals that are in a good situation. But I had like a dog that I fostered, which was my family dog. And my family's dog was my brother's dog. And I ended up getting the dog into a new home because he was in a really bad situation, a very dysfunctional situation. But when the dog died, the spirit, he still comes around, and he still came around in spirit even when he was still alive. Like, he didn't want the bond to be over, because we had like a really deep relationship, because we were rescuing each other. It was one of those situations where we were rescuing each other. And he put himself in an insufferable situation because he was a Bodhisattva. So he was trying to bring healing to the family, and he wasn't able to fulfill that because the family was so, in fact, it's my family, but it was so severely dysfunctional that he ended up becoming sick. And he ended up eventually, he got better when he was adopted, but then he got cancer and died. And I think that cancer was already starting to happen when he was in this situation, but he would be there for everybody in the family in a different way for each person. And I have never seen a creature do that before. And so I ended up writing a memoir about it. I don't know how I don't have to self-publish it because I don't have the money to do that. But I did write a memoir about how he actually rescued me, when I was trying to get him into another home. And he was a senior dog. He had health problems. People were saying, there's no way anybody's going to adopt him. Just take him to the shelter, or just do this, just do that. And I'm like, I can't do that to him. Like, I can't take the dog to a shelter. I just couldn't do it. And so I found a foster program, and then there was this couple that were looking exactly for him. They wanted a senior dog with health problems because that's what they specialized in. And so they rehabbed him, and they ended up having him as a pet for about another 4 years before he ended up dying. I think it was about 4 years, 5 years, almost 5 years, because he turned 14. So they had him for a little over 5 years. Or maybe a little bit less, because they got him halfway through the year when they adopted him. So, they got a really good chunk of time. And he was just like, she said it all the time too. She goes, this dog is really special. There's just something about, like, he would match his energy with whoever he was with. And he would adapt. He was very flexible. He was very vocal. Like, he was always talking, whining, barking. I mean, growling, whatever, but he was always talking. And he was the reason I became a Reiki practitioner.
Wow.
So, because when he was getting his teeth, he had a bunch of teeth extracted, and he got really sick from the anesthesia. And so I was up with him one night just trying to help him through that. And I go, man, if I only knew how to do Reiki, I could help him. And then the pandemic happened, and I studied Reiki online. So, but I was remembering the whole time, like, when I wanted to give up, because this was a really hard Reiki class, because it was online and the lessons were really super hard. And I go, well, I don't really need to do this. But then every time I would do that, I'd see his picture on my desk, and I'd be like, no, I need to keep going. I need to do this. And I did all 3 levels, and I did them all kind of like right after each other. And then I met these other Reiki people going, why did you do that? You should have just done one and then worked with it for a while, and then did the next one, and then the next one after that. But you're not supposed to do them all at once. No wonder you felt so overwhelmed, But I just wanted to just do them all. Like, I was so excited about it. Because I thought, oh my gosh, I can become a hands-on healer. How exciting, but it was the right time too. Like, it was definitely the right time.
So you communicate with the pets, you'd go into a deep place. Do you channel as well? Have you ever channeled an animal before?
Yeah. Okay. I was doing that before I became an animal communicator.
Okay. So how does that work? Do you go in the back? Are you not conscious while you're channeling?
No, I'm conscious, because I've been a journalist. So I become kind of like, I end up combining journalistic skills. I won't let them go into my body. I mean, I had that happen to me when I was younger. But I won't let that happen. I don't like that. This is my body, right? This is my soul's the only one in this body. And so I had to set boundaries, with a lot of them, but sometimes they'll all kind of come at me, like, it's mostly human spirits that I've channeled, but I've channeled the racehorse Secretariat more than one time. And he actually was a spirit guide for me, even when he was still alive. It was like before he was going to die. Like, I think it was, maybe 3 years before he died or something. A friend of mine was doing shamanism, the one that I mentioned. And she goes, I got you a power animal. And she told me the name of the horse and stuff. I mean, not the name of the horse, the nickname of the horse, right? And then years later, when I started thinking about Secretariat out of the blue, I started watching all these videos, and he had won one race by 32 lengths, which is, at the time, 1973, was impossible. No horse had done anything like that up until that point. And then after he died, I remember hearing some news story and feeling really sad, like, oh, how horrible, and then I forgot about it. And then it was like an anniversary of his or something. And he came to me, and I started channeling him. And it was more of a spiritual mediumship because he's dead. But he had been like my power animal before he died. And I'm like, well, how's that even possible? And then people said that horse was supernatural when he was alive. There was something different about the horse. And, one reporters journalists are very practical people. They're not like mystical, they don't say, they don't like anything that people, they don't want to be called woo-woo by anyone. So, but there was this one guy, he was interviewed, he was a reporter and he was interviewed, he was like a sports reporter. And he said that there was something supernatural about that horse, like a Pegasus, right? And this is a guy who I'm like, whoa, this is coming from a sports journalist, reporter guy. Back in the 70s when men were very macho. This is the time of the Marlboro Man and, the self-made man and all the rest of the 70s and the 80s, men were very macho during that time and before that as well. But I mean, definitely during the 70s and 80s was very macho.
So I can imagine that with all of these experiences, you have a lot of hope after death.
I do actually. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of disease.
Yeah.
And hospitals. I'm terrified of hospitals.
Mm.
Like I think dying in a hospital would be like one of the worst things that could happen because hospitals are so negative and there's so like all these dark energies like floating around and all the machines and it's just not
all the fear that people have carried in with them.
Yeah, if you're an empath, you don't want to be in a hospital.
Oy, oy, oy.
No,
So
and also I don't want to do the funeral home thing when I die. I want to do the green burial, and plant trees over the top, and I don't want a coffin, and I don't want to be cremated. I really want to do things like I want my funeral to be outdoors, and I want it to be a celebration. I don't want it to be a negative cry fest where people are. And I don't want to be sainted. Like, I don't want people to only say, like, I mention the shadows, mention everything, right? Don't like when my dad died, my brother wrote this obituary that wasn't even true. I mean, it was just so like over the top sainthood. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why, like, I don't want anything like that. I don't want people only remembering the good stuff or trying to only remember the good stuff. I want to be a human, right? I want to be known for like, oh yeah, not for like scandalous things, but I mean, she had these quirks or, and then people can laugh and stuff and, not gossipy or anything, but just kind of out of love.
Yeah.
Respect. And to be respectful. I mean, you don't want to say things about people when they die that, like you shouldn't bring out of the closet kind of things. But at the same time, I just want when I die, I want that transition to be respected. And I only want people to be there who understand the transition. So I don't want people bringing their fear, like their own fear of death or, and if there's like a shaman officiating it, that would be better than having a priest or a pastor or something, like somebody who's been to the other worlds and
somebody who's aligned with you. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, everybody, I think people are going to become more experimental with how they're going to pass. I think we're kind of moving into this really interesting time where people are just going, why do I do things this way? I don't want to do things that way, where people are going to become more sovereign and make their own decisions rather than having society tell them what they can and cannot do.
Yeah. So we're coming up to the end of our time. Do you have any last encouragement you'd like to say to pet owners out there about communicating with them?
Yeah, I mean, anybody can learn how to do it. Like anybody can learn how to communicate with their pets. It's different to make it as a profession than it is to actually just use it in your daily life. Profession has a lot more legal things and, you have to get insurance and, you have to make sure that you don't, if the animal's not well, you have to, of course, tell them to take the animal to the vet and things like that. So there's all these legal things you have to do as a professional. But if people are only communicating with their animals or their neighbors' animals or things like that, anybody can learn how to do that. It's just developing the gift of telepathy and believing that it's real. So when the animal communicates, instead of having the doubts come in and saying, oh, I'm not really doing this and blocking the flow, understand that we all have that ability. And then for like ages and ages and ages, humans were communicating with animals. It wasn't until we got into kind of moving into this modern age, where, I remember that movie, The Horse Whisperer with Robert Redford, when that came out. I mean, that's not really animal communication. That's a different. That's almost like animal behavior training, kind of more in that realm, but still picking up the energy of the animal, kind of maybe psychically, maybe a little bit. When that came out, people were thinking, oh, that's not even possible. Like, people can't do that. He was special. Like, only he could do that. Only horse whisperers can do this, or only, Cesar Millan came out with his dog training where he calls himself a dog whisperer, but he doesn't mean it in the animal communication sense. He's more of a dog trainer. So people maybe don't have, they may think of it as too mystical, or you don't have to be mystical or spiritual to do it. It can be a very practical thing where you're just tuning in to your own consciousness, like your own mindfulness. Like, what are you thinking when you're with the pet? Because they're picking up that. We think visually. And that's how we send messages telepathically. We're sending energy, like vibration, but we're also sending visuals. So when you tell your animal you're going to the beach, but you're really going to the vet, and you're picturing the vet, they know they're not going to the beach. And now you're gaslighting them, and they may not trust. So people they do it kind of to tease their animal, because they don't know that the animal is actually picking up visuals. So that's the main thing. So remember that the animal's picking up visuals. The animal is always picking up cues from the human, because it's a survival thing. It's an instinct that they still have. And we have that too when we're with other humans. Like when you walk into a room and you could feel like something's wrong, or you walk into a room and it feels very light and vibrant. That's telepathy. That's our that's that inner knowing that we have, that we all have that. And it usually clicks on before the ego comes in. And then the ego comes in and rationalizes everything.
Yep.
Go, oh, I'm not going to listen to that, And anytime I didn't listen to my intuition, I had consequences, right? And so I'm learning, oh no, I've got to listen to my feelings. And that's the big thing right now. All the spiritual teachers are now talking about feelings.
Right.
And thoughts. So that's the same with working with animals. It's feeling.
That's our time. Thank you so much for sharing your spiritual journey and what you're doing now with it. It's so interesting. The way that I end my conversations is I give hugs. You feel free to take it or not, but I just give hugs to you. I give hugs to the people watching or listening. Thank you for being here, and hopefully we'll talk again another time. Apologies if that seemed a bit abrupt. I do believe that I needed to pick up my baby from daycare directly after the recording of that. But isn't she a fascinating person, man? The things she's seen, and there's so many questions I wish I would have asked. Here I am growing in this journey, even after having done it for over 3 years. But I know there's always more to learn about going deeper and finding out how to connect best with people. If there's anyone you'd like me to have on this podcast that personally that you'd like to introduce us, I am so open to that. If you have a story that you would like to share, I am open for that. I'm currently recording this the end of June 2024. The summer is a perfect time for me to get recording in because Morton is home, so I have more flexibility to do this. It's so fun to have these conversations. I can't even tell you how much I love this. Here I am at my computer, and I am editing this video currently, and I want to put it out there that if you would like to support the work of this channel, as I continue to find fascinating people, as I continue to hear their spiritual journeys, and make content that reaches the people that feel like we don't quite fit in whatever way, and we're looking for a place to call home, and looking for a place to land, as it were. If you'd like to support this work and this passion project of mine, then you can give me a donation on PayPal. I can include that information in the description and show notes. I appreciate anything that the universe would lead you to donate towards this work. And, life as it is. This is besides the editing work that I do, this is my full-time work. Hugs! And I'll see you in the comment section and the social medias that I'm on. I'm so glad you're still here. Please like this video, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe. Bye!